This edition of Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose is sponsored by Salesforce and Carasoft. On this edition of Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose, a full-day celebration of government technology. The CIO of the Labor Department tells you about it. $50 million new dollars coming in digital transformation. And the path ahead for login.gov. GSA's Sonny Hashmi shares his vision. Welcome to Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose. 4 federal agencies are winners of Best Booth Awards from this year's Federal Tech Day. The Labor Department hosted Federal Tech Day. Gundeep Ahluwalia is Chief Information Officer at Labor. Gundeep, welcome. It's great to see you again. How did Federal Tech Day wind up at the Labor Department?
Well, thank you so much for having me. So first, I really want to talk about what Labor does. We protect your 401ks. We are in every mine inspecting them. We are also doing workman compensation claims, which has HIPAA-protected information. We have the jobless claims, which gets most of the press. We are connected with U.S. Department of Agriculture, with Energy, with DHS, with USCIS. So the idea was, hey, how about we come together and celebrate technology? And this is not about selling stuff to the program folks, but actually the program folks partnering with us and showcasing the technologies and how that helps them do the mission delivery, right? So it started as a very small idea. I remember Suzette and the CIO Council sort of bought onto that as well. And then it sort of grew to what it is today, where we had like over 100 booths. We had almost 3,500 people virtually, as well as, and we had 14 different federal agencies come in and showcase, from firefighting to IRS showcasing their forms scanning software, to MSHA bringing in their mine rescue equipment and giving you a view into how they go into mines when emergencies happen. So it became an event out of an idea that was there like 4 years ago. We had to take a bit of a pause during the pandemic, but we are back and we did fairly well, and I'm very happy with it.
You know very well that I love to get gifts, so I'm grateful that you brought me a little swag bag from Federal Tech Day. What did you learn from this year's event that you're going to plow into next year and in the 12 months in between?
Yeah, so first of all, I think we, as usual, found so many new people come in and experience. So I'm still getting a barrage of emails where I'm making connections between folks, right? Hey, how did you do that form analyzer? Can I steal it, right? Here's what I tell people. We spend about $80 billion on IT in the federal space. We all own the IP on that, right? So there is no need for us to push a cart with square wheels when somebody else has already paid and has round wheels. So we need to get those.
Yeah.
So that was the whole idea. And I'm getting a barrage of those kind of connections right now, where MSHA, mine safety equipment, the fire safety from USDA, and other things. The other aspect of this, which is always, we didn't realize when we originally envisioned is that we get a lot of OMB support, a lot of visibility from the Hill, and folks come in and are able to experience how we are using these dollars into IT. Otherwise, they become IT dollars and they become lifeless, right? Yep. But at the end of the day, they're actually vital for mission delivery these days. I always tell people, hey, try working without your laptop for a couple of days and see how mission delivery goes for you.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I think that's important about what you said there, there was no doubt in my mind that Suzette Kent, when she was federal CIO, supported this concept. Claire Martirano, the current federal CIO, same thing. The Hill interaction, I think, strikes me as maybe the most important element of this, so they see eyeballs when they're considering appropriations and authorizations for what you and your peers across government are doing.
I think it is vital. To be honest with you, I think we have been able to draw their attention as to how we are utilizing these dollars. We are one of those few agencies that has a expiring funds authority to sweep funds and deploy them to IT modernization, which we report to Congress on a quarterly basis. But all of those things have come because they are able to feel it. How does this actually draw a line between that investment and a workman's compensation check, or protection of a 401k, or actually generating apprenticeships, or how grants are being managed? I always remind people that as newer technologies are coming in, green jobs are coming in, automation is coming in, self-driving cars are coming in, we will have to retrain our workforce. And that is why I believe the U.S. Department of Labor is going to become more and more important. We have a $23 billion grant program that we manage for the American people, largely deployed on apprenticeships and retraining America, right? That is so vital. And they come in and see how we are doing that, how we are putting out apprenticeship.gov, how we are reforming grant portfolios, how we are making it easier for people to come in and take advantage of those grants and go to areas which are underserved.
About a year and a half ago, speaking of workforce, you were on a podcast with me and we talked about your workforce. And it was striking to me because before we did it, I said, what's on your mind? What do you want to talk about? The first thing you mentioned was not technology, it was the people that are working for you. What's the state of your workforce now? What are you seeing trend-wise as far as retirements, the skill sets that you have and need, and all of that, Gundeep?
Yeah, so it is always about people, right? And that's what I said then, and that's what I say today. Our workforce at Labor is strong. I think we have learned a lot from the pandemic. We are hiring nationwide. We are attracting talent pools that we had never attracted in the past. We have a pressure of retirements. We have pressures that the rest of the federal government and the private sector is facing as well. The one thing that we have invested over the last 6-7 years is a lot on DEIA. Even though the term has been coined now, we have been building thought diversity, competent workforce for a long time. One of the key indicators I always am very proud of is we are about 43% women in OCIO now, and it was half that when I took over 7 years ago, right? So that has become a investment that we have made, and it's about building a pipeline. The other thing in that is 73% of those women are actually in GS13 or above in leadership positions, right? Senior executives, GS15s. And they are now building a healthy pipeline of diverse applicants that are coming in. So I'm very hopeful, even though there are challenges that we face just like the rest of the industry.
I hear an advantage that you have, not just in workforce, in something that you said kind of offhand there. You've been on the job 7 years. That's very uncommon for a chief information officer in the federal government. Does that give you an advantage, do you think, in seeing the long view, in seeing things through where somebody who's there, whether it's a political or a career, for 2, 3, 4 years might not be able to see that view?
Yeah, I think it is vital for anybody in the CIO type positions to have longer term view on how to take, because these are aircraft carriers. They don't turn on a dime. You have to really plan capital investments, do process re-engineering, partner with the Hill, partner with programs, define what the problem areas are, do user-centric design, and then put out these solutions with change management. And they have to be secure. You have to take care of privacy, etc. So I do think that longevity is a asset when turning these aircraft carriers.
Back to the workforce, tapping these outside sources of people that maybe not everybody is doing. How are you doing that?
So we have a very robust word-of-mouth program. If people are happy, they are always referring others, which I always feel is great. A social media program is at the center of this as well. At the end of the day, folks don't like to go to usajobs.gov.
Right.
What they like is and we deploy the latest and greatest in technology. That is one thing that allows for people, when they come in, to stay satisfied, and then we connect it to the mission delivery. That is vital at the end of the day. Nobody wants to do a Windows upgrade. What they want to do is save that mine from a mine emergency.
Right. The focus on the mission is something, though, that permeates pretty much every conversation I have with people like you. And it strikes me that's something that is maybe not widely known to people around the country, especially potential employees at the Labor Department. Is that a fair observation on my part?
Yeah, I think it's getting better, right? As people like me have stopped talking about blockchain and cloud technologies, and we are trying to talk about, hey, this is about immigration, it's about that workman's compensation claim, and how does that connect with the work that we do on a daily basis? I think it also became very apparent to people during the pandemic. If there is a silver lining in the pandemic, is all the investments that we made in the infrastructure, you could perform your work from anywhere at the Department of Labor. We did not miss a beat.
It's pretty amazing stuff. Thank you for the swag bag, Gundeep. I really appreciate it. It's wonderful to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you, too.
You can read more about all of those issues, including a rundown of Federal Tech Day at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, $50 million new dollars coming in digital transformation. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. If you want insights from agency and industry leaders on the latest topics in technology, management, workforce, defense, and acquisition, sign up for the Fed Gov Today podcast with me, Francis Rose. I release new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, so you'll stay up to date on the issues that matter most to federal government leaders. Listen at fedgovtoday.com and everywhere you get your shows. Don't miss out on the conversation. Follow the podcast today. Welcome back. 5 agencies will get $50 million in funds from the Technology Modernization Fund. They'll use that money for cyber projects, customer experience projects, and digital modernization. Mia Jordan's digital transformation executive at Salesforce. She's former chief information officer at the Office of Federal Student Aid at the Department of Education. Mia, welcome. Thanks for coming on the program. There are a couple of things to think about when you get a TMF award from what the experts tell me.
Yes.
One is strategic and one is tactical. What do you think these organizations that are getting these awards should be thinking about in both of those areas?
Yeah, strategically, change management is often critical. I know we talk about it a lot, in principle, but in practice, it really, really matters when you're talking about changing the way in which a business process has worked for decades. Much of what people don't consider is that the people who likely helped to create that system 20, 30 years ago are there to see that system kind of disrupted, right before their eyes. And so there certainly is a lot of emotion, right, that comes along with that. And I sound like a psychologist here, but the reality is I've been close enough to enough modernization efforts to see the connection, right, and the disappointment, the disillusionment. And so that's really, really important to get people ready, get a communication strategy in place rather quickly. But also you need champions, right, all across the organization who are going to be impacted to keep the positive message flowing and to address risks head on, quite frankly. And so that's the strategic part. The tactical part is really putting a strong team together, right? An integrated team of experts, of business, both technology folks, certainly, folks from your human resources department, public relations, like all of those voices in the room, or at least represented, is really important from a tactical perspective. We see a lot of modernization initiatives go wrong because you haven't considered kind of who the necessary stakeholders should have been up front and along for the ride in terms of how the work is going to get managed, how it's going to get accepted, right, and then how ultimately it'll get rolled out. So those are some of my ideas and lessons learned for sure. There's
one thing I want to pull out of the strategic piece of that, and if I'm reading too much into this, I apologize, but it sounded like I heard you say, and I'm paraphrasing, when we're changing business processes. Is that really the way that we should be thinking about, that organizations and government should be thinking about this, that's maybe step one, and then the way that you change that business process, use the money, design the tactical attack? Am I on the right track there?
I think so. Much of what we hear about in modernization initiatives, even customer experience initiatives, require you to really take a look at the business process, oftentimes part manual, part technology, and like how do you bridge that together using the right piece of technology that often will alter the way that you deliver a service or a benefit, right, to a constituent. And so it's really important that you get folks in the room to agree first and foremost on like, how did it work in the beginning, right? And then how do we hope it will work in the future? And how does that impact the way federal employees do their jobs? And that's really, really important for them to have that understanding first and foremost, because if they don't, right, that's when you start, I think, having to battle the rumors that, you know, the tech is coming to steal my work, right? I'll be out of a job once this new system gets implemented. So, yeah.
Another thing that I think I hear there is the engagement that a lot of that stuff sounds like soft skills and it doesn't have as much to do with technology as it does to do with management leadership concepts, right?
No doubt. That's why I talked about those champions across the organization, not just the champion represented in that program area, but also kind of the downstream functional areas that typically are a part of, you know, how a program gets executed, a grants program as an example. You may deal with the subject matter experts specifically in that program area, but what about the finance people who have to, you know, get the checks ready and distribute it, right? They're impacted too. And so it's being able to see that process in its totality and understanding who all are involved, who all are impacted, and ultimately who all need to be at the table when we're making decisions about the technology and how it will work.
Mia Jordan, it's great to see you. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you.
You can read more about digital modernization and the TMF Awards at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, the path ahead for login.gov. That's on the way. GSA's Sonny Hashmi's here when Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. If you want insights from agency and industry leaders on the latest topics in technology, management, workforce, defense, and acquisition, sign up for the Fed Gov Today podcast with me, Francis Rose. I release new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, so you'll stay up to date on the issues that matter most to federal government leaders. Listen at fedgovtoday.com and everywhere you get your shows. Don't miss out on the conversation. Follow the podcast today. Welcome back. The General Services Administration says it'll implement all the recommendations its Office of Inspector General made about problems the IG found with login.gov. The IG found GSA claimed login.gov met NIST digital identity guidelines when it really didn't. Sonny Hashmi is Commissioner of the Federal Acquisition Service at the General Services Administration. Sonny, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming on. What specifically are you taking action-wise to meet the challenge that Congress gave you about login.gov?
Yeah, thanks, Francis. It's great to be here, too. So let's go back to first principles. The entire thesis and the reason for login's existence is that Americans need a consistent single account to work with their government agencies, whether they're applying for benefits or they're interacting in a different with an agency. This account needs to be secure. It needs to protect privacy. And it needs to reduce fraud. And more importantly than everything else, it needs to work for all Americans. That is the entire thesis and the reason why we are proud to work on this program. Login's value proposition continues to be very clear to agencies. Just the last month, we announced that we have surpassed 70 million user accounts in Login, and the utility and the adoption keeps going up. We have great plans forthcoming. In fact, the Login team recently, about a month ago, released a roadmap for the program that anybody can go online and take a look at for themselves. That roadmap covers not only the immediate response to the commitments that we made to Congress, but also creates a very bold agenda for the next many years on how this program is going to grow. That includes new capabilities that are already being deployed. As an example, we recently deployed an integration with the United States Postal Service that allows all Americans, no matter where they are, to go to the local post office and get in-person identity proofing. Similarly, we just expanded the hours and languages that people can engage with the program with. Now we can provide customer service 24/7, no matter where you are. These are all examples of how we are recommitted to continue to not only earn the trust, but also increase value we provide to our agency partners.
One of the commitments that you made to Congress was creating a Login.gov steering committee. What do those folks do, and what are the deliverables for that steering committee, Sonny?
Of course. So, listen, everything we do ultimately needs to serve the needs of our customers. The steering committee has already been meeting for over a year. In fact, that committee has executives from all branches of government and more specifically at all levels of government. We have many agency partners who provide us with feedback on how the service is working for them. And they also help us guide and navigate the emerging threat landscape that we're operating in. So we continue to get that feedback in the hands of the people who are building this capability, and we'll continue to do so.
We'll put a link to that roadmap at fedgovtoday.com in the show notes for this episode of the show. What does that roadmap look like briefly? Is there a destination at the end of that map, or are there just landmarks along the way that you and your team want to hit?
Yeah, I don't believe in destinations. I think the world around us is changing constantly. The expectations for the capabilities we're building will continue to change, but we do have a good line of sight over the next 18 months. We want to certainly increase the compliance and posture of the program. We want to make sure that we work on new use cases with agencies such as the Department of Labor. Gundeep was on the show just recently, to make sure that Americans who frankly need access to government services at all levels of government, whether it's state, local, or federal government, can continue to use a common service and a common account. And then we continue to want to make sure that we lean into making sure that the service works for everybody. Remember, not all Americans have access to a bank account, an address, and we have to serve all of these Americans. So we want to continue to build capabilities that allow anybody to work with the government in a digital sense, no matter what their capability and access may be.
Last time we were together, you were on the podcast, and we talked about your North Stars, and one of those is you want to make it dead easy to do business with the Federal Acquisition Service. What does that look like in the summer of 2023, Sonny?
So for those of you who may not know, one of the things that I care deeply about is to make sure that I create a vision for the organization that anybody can relate to. At the Federal Acquisition Service, our mission is very simple, but it's deeply important. Number one, we want to create products and services that matter and add value to the customer's mission. Two, we want to create a marketplace that's thriving, resilient, and equitable, and creates pathways for new entrants into doing business with the government. And third, as you mentioned, is to continue to make it easier to do business with the government. We have done a lot in this space just in the last couple of years alone. As an example, one of the things that we care about deeply is to actually listen to the user stories. On the other side of every transaction and every interaction that we have, it's a company, it's a new business, it's a small business, it's a user. We want to make sure that we listen to them directly. And every product that we build is based on that feedback. I'll give you two examples. We recently, about 6 months ago, released a new capability called buy.gsa.gov. If you're a buyer who wants to buy a product or service for the federal government, that is your one-stop shop to go and get the entire process completed from end to end. That is based 100% on user feedback. We sat down with users and understood how they do their work and build capabilities that actually matter to them. Similarly, we're about to release and recently announced release of a new platform that is going to completely change how vendors get on GSA schedules. As you know, that's been a fairly complicated process for a long time that involves technology that was designed in the 1990s. We're going to completely change that. In fact, I'm excited to share that just in this coming year, we're going to be retiring two systems called SIP and CORE. Both of them are 20 years old with a modern online-based capability that allow real-time ability to modify and change your contracts. We recently announced a capability that allows you to do certain contract modifications in real time without any human intervention for certain types of changes. That is all based on user feedback that we constantly get. And so those are just some examples on how we're constantly focused on reducing the barrier to entry, making it easier, allowing people to actually work from wherever they are, and to the extent possible, using automation and technology to be able to reduce not just the burden on our user base, but also our internal contracting officer base.
What I think I hear there too is that you consider your user base the vendors that sell into the government through GSA, as well as your government customers that buy from GSA.
Absolutely.
Through GSA. Is
Everything
that right?
we do has three stakeholder groups. We have the supplier base, tens of thousands of companies, small and large, who do business with us every day. We have our customers, ultimately, who are buying these products and services to achieve a mission outcome. And then we have our internal workforce. their needs need to be also kept in mind as we develop these modernization strategies.
Yeah, GSA was kind of the pioneer of the internal customer experience. Martha Doris and others that were in the organization. How do you consider that when you're going through things like replacing SIP and other things like that? What does that look like from an internal perspective?
It's a great question, and the same rules apply. You need to get the users who are going to log in and do a thing in the decision cycle, in the design process. Without those people on the table, and these folks are not always folks that traditionally, people talk to when they're thinking about a modernization project. We put the user at the end, at the center of every modernization we do. So as an example, some of the capabilities I mentioned, we had groups created where internal contracting officers, program managers came together and directly provided feedback on how they work and what's getting in their way. And that feedback then drives how we build the capabilities we build.
You mentioned automation. I imagine automation is going to be a big component of the kind of the upgrades, the transformations that you're doing at GSA.
Absolutely. There's two main components. I call them foundational pillars that drive all the modernization we're doing. One of them is automation and the other is data. Federal acquisition is a data problem. In fact, in some of the interviews I've done in the past, I've called this a 10-year challenge. If we can get the data right, we can support cybersecurity expectations, we can create new opportunities for small business, we can identify the right products and services to buy to drive sustainability. All these initiatives that we're trying to drive, we can do that, but we need to have deep visibility into what's being bought, what's available, and what the marketplace looks like.
Mm-hmm. What happens next in some of these areas that we've talked about? What happens next with login? What happens next with the changes that you're making in SIP and these other things?
Yeah, there's a lot of transformation we're driving across the Federal Acquisition Service. You're going to be hearing a lot more as some of these foundational things are now in place. The one thing that I will share is that these things are going to continue to be released in certain cadences. As an example, we recently released a procurement equity tool that allows federal agencies to identify small businesses that are specialized down to the congressional district on where they want the work to be done. That has never existed before, and that required us to bring data from multiple sources together to put it in the hands of decision makers who are identifying a particular contractor to do a job. Similarly, that data can be used by vendors to identify their competitive landscape to see how they can be more effective and more successful. That's just one example of how data is already powering a lot of the things that we're doing. So go check that out. But if you want to learn more, follow our efforts on interact.gsa.gov or just go to gsa.gov. We regularly post blogs there, and you'll know more about all the different things that are happening and coming down the pike.
Sonny Hashmi, it's great to see you. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Francis.
You can find a link to all of those resources that Sonny talked about at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today with Francis Rose is back in a moment. If you want insights from agency and industry leaders on the latest topics in technology, management, workforce, defense, and acquisition, sign up for the Fed Gov Today podcast with me, Francis Rose. I release new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, so you'll stay up to date on the issues that matter most to federal government leaders. Listen at fedgovtoday.com and everywhere you get your shows. Don't miss out on the conversation. Follow the podcast today. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose returns next Sunday morning at 10:30. I'm Francis Rose. Thanks very much for watching. See you next Sunday. Have a great week.